Welcome back to the Sam JW channel. Another fellow promoted side, another draw. 5 consecutive draws for Oxford United as they draw 1-1 with Derby County at Grenoble Road. Let's chat about it. So yes, it finishes 1-1 at Grenoble Road between Oxford United and Derby County. This game for me is the epitome of the phrase a game of two halves, because as we'll get into it, you'll see that both sides had the or each side had the better of one of the halves, and similar to the game against Portsmouth, this felt much more like a League One fixture than a Championship fixture, not based on the teams, based on the quality of each side. Lineups, we'll go through those as we always do. Pretty much the exact same lineup that started against West Brom, except one major change. Of course, Jamie Cumming kept his place in goal. Peter Kioso, Elliot Moore, Ben Nelson and Kieran Brown, with Will Vaulks, Idris El Mazouni and Ruben Rodriguez, Siriki Dembele and Tyler Goodrum wide of Dane Scarlett, making his first appearance in the league as an Oxford United player. Obviously, he scored that late equaliser on Saturday against West Brom, so it's fair to say that I think he did deserve a first start. And it's in a week, of course, where we've got Sunderland on Saturday. That's going to be a big game, and you know, rotation need. I'm surprised we didn't see a bit more rotation from Des, but you know, regardless of that, obviously a lot of these players are going to be playing a lot of football over the next couple of days. A couple of players, of course, we know from an Oxford point of view. Obviously, Nelson is a player we've had and we love for a long time as an Oxford support base. Mendes Lang and Corey Blackett-Taylor, of course, were with Derby last campaign. A lot of the side were, but those, of course, the two danger men out in the wide areas. Jerry Yates, a very interesting player, of course. He went to from Blackpool to Swansea last summer, of course, in exchange for, I think it was £2.5 million plus Joseph, and he didn't really have an amazing time of it at Swansea. So of course has been loaned out to Derby County. Ibu Adams, another lad that was on loan with Derby last season, has been brought in permanently by Paul Warne. Of course, these two sides know each other incredibly well, of course, including a now Oxford United man, but again, we'll get into that when we talk a little bit about the tactical change that happened during the game. First half, if we look at it, it's very much a case of, like I said, I think on the balance of play, Oxford were the better side. Better quality opportunities, I think, and there is certainly a case that Oxford defended a lot better than Derby did in that first half. Obviously, the goal comes from a brilliant bit of play, where it starts with Kieran Brown, who obviously is playing a left back, more advanced position, plays it into Will Vaulks, Vaulks to El Mazouni, lovely 1-2 with him and Siriki Dembele with a lovely little outside the foot pass into the area as El Mazouni's making the run into the box, pushes it across the face of the Derby goal, and there is Dane Scarlett, who just gets a little nick on it, but it takes it past the Derby keeper. And you know, absolutely sensational for Dane Scarlett to score in his first start, so early into his first start as an Oxford player. 2 goals in, what we're talking now, less than 90 minutes of football, because obviously he didn't finish this game. He only came on for a short amount of time in the West Brom game. That's a very good goals to game record for Dane Scarlett. And I have to say, overall, again, as always, we'll touch on player performances in a bit. I thought Dane looked really good for the most part in this game. Obviously, it's a fantastic start to the game. This is Oxford's earliest goal of the Championship season, just 12 minutes into this fixture, and it has to be said, Oxford, like I say, continue to play the better of the two sides in my view. Again, if we go back and look at the momentum chart, the goal comes here after a sustained period of very high pressure from Oxford United, and these kind of dips obviously as Derby get the ball back, they kind of grow back into the game, and then towards the end of the half, a lot more high points for Oxford United, a couple of more decent opportunities. There's one from Tyler Goodrum after he and Will Vaulks do well to win the ball back just forward of the halfway line, and Tyler, I think, takes the shot a little bit too early. We've seen, of course, Tyler only loves to score bangers, but he should have taken it a bit closer. I think there's also another great opportunity, I believe it was Ruben Rodriguez, I think it is, fizzed the ball across the box, but Dane Scarlett is not able to get onto the end of it. A couple of big chances coming for Oxford, and it looked like very much that we kind of pushed any thought of the last game between these two sides away. Of course, that last game was a 3-2 win for Derby County after Oxford were 2-0 up inside 15 minutes. So it looked like we'd pushed any thought of that aside, but obviously Derby came back into this game after half-time, much the better side, much more hungry. Clearly Paul Warner giving them a bit of a talking to in that in the interval, and fair to say that I think Derby can count themselves unlucky to maybe not have got a second. Obviously, the second goal was always going to be key in this game, of course. If Oxford would have got it, that would have probably killed Derby off, but they just looked the better side. And looking at the second half stats, obviously, again, very even in terms of possession, fairly even in terms of the control of the ball. But Derby just better with the ball, and we talk a lot about how Oxford are pretty compact when it comes to defending counter-attacks, because they limit opposition to a lot of long shots. But this game is a complete flip on that. A lot of really, really decent efforts from Derby in the Oxford penalty area. And of course, Nathaniel Mendes-Lang gets the equaliser 10 minutes after the restart. It's really sloppy. Again, as always, we talk about player ratings and the player performances, but Will Vaulks has a little bit of a hand in this. The Oxford players are rushing, making rash decisions, and then Vaulks is dispossessed. It goes out to the Derby left-hand side. It's fizzed back across. Kieran Brown doesn't pick up Nathaniel Mendes-Lang, and he slots it home to give the visitors their equaliser, and we didn't pick up much after that. There was one or two kind of brightish attacks, as you can see. A few wild shots from range, and then even the two that were inside the area were very low XG. Just very wide of the from the box, and yeah, Oxford didn't offer an awful lot in that second half. And like I say, I think Derby would be very. I think they were unlucky not to get a second goal, because there were a lot of sustained attacks we can see on the momentum chart. So second half begins, and it's just very small kind of, these are forays forward that don't result in much for Oxford, and just sustained, not massively high, but they are certainly a lot of pressure being applied to Oxford United, a lot of pressure on the ball, forcing Oxford players to make mistakes. And it's certainly like I said, this is where it really felt like a League One fixture, in the sense that neither side were really giving each other much time on the ball, and there was unforced errors. A lot of times both Derby and Oxford players would put the ball out of play, and yeah, it just wasn't a very good second half of football. This was, I'd say, up there with Oxford's worst performance of the campaign. I reckon Derby fans might say that first half was one of their worst performances of the season so far. And yeah, it finishes 1-1, and I have to say, like I said, I think Derby maybe could feel unlucky to not get a second goal, but that first half they were so bad. Paul Warne came out and said that first half was just terrible. That I think a draw is fairly is a fair enough result. Obviously, both sides main objective is just to stay in the division this season, and you have to say both sides are looking really, really good. If we look at the table, obviously we're only 11 games into the campaign, and Oxford and Derby in the top half of the or near the top half of the league. And I mean, considering obviously Derby were the more favoured of the two to stay up, but there's definitely a case that Derby were also considered to be in a relegation scrap at the end of the campaign. Obviously we've got another 35 games to go, but on the evidence that we have in front of us, both sides have really prepared themselves for this championship campaign, obviously compared to Portsmouth, who at the minute sit down bottom of the table, and it looks like, at least for Portsmouth, it's going to be a bit of a relegation fight, as it was expected to be for Oxford United. But like I say, I think both Derby and Oxford have defied expectations when it comes to the starts they've had, both racking up a fair number of big wins. Obviously Oxford have drawn a hell of a lot of games, Derby have lost more, but the reality is that both sides have looked competitive in games, which is so important going forward for the rest of the season. In terms of player performances, Jamie Cumming obviously makes some fairly decent saves. Jamie's always a reliable man in the sticks for Oxford, and fair to say that he was pretty busy. A lot of them obviously were fairly routine shots for Jamie Cumming to save, but it showed that a lot of the time the midfield was and the defence was breaking down. Kioso and Brown, I thought Kioso was superb in the first half. Kieran Brown was very good in the second half. Both just lacking something. Kieran wasn't amazing with the accuracy of his passing, and it's going to be interesting to see what Des chooses to do on Saturday against Sunderland, because there is obviously the wrinkle that we've got another wide knock in the form of Siriki Dembele, who came off at half time. Greg came on late in the game on the left hand side, so it might be a case that Des decides once again to deploy Greg as a wing, as he did at the back half of last season. Ben Nelson, another phenomenal defensive performance from the lad. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say I think this lad will go on to play for England. Obviously we've had over the past season and of course last season two very talented young England players. Beadle, I thought definitely in his spells for Oxford. I've not seen too much of him obviously at Sheffield Wednesday, but he looked like he would go on to play for England, just the player he was. And I think Ben Nelson will definitely be an England international. Just that, like, this lad is like 20 years old, and the way he just he's so composed when cleaning up a midfielder or Kieran Brown's mess. When he's got that extra burst of pace to get to the ball ahead of an attacker. He's got the aerial, he's got the passing ability. The fact he can play off both feet, he is superb. And I just can't believe that Oxford managed to get him on a loan deal. Obviously, there's a lot of Leicester fans that were kind of, really, really keen to keep him around the Premier League side. But I think this loan is going to be really good for him and really good for Leicester in the long run, because of course he only got 5 appearances last season, and fair to say that a player can't do a lot of developing in just 5 appearances, and the fact of the matter is that even if he was in around the Leicester squad this season, he's not going to be starting games on the regular. So getting this loan spell, getting regular first team football in the Championship can only do this lad a world of good, and I would be surprised if he is not starting for Leicester City next season, regardless of the division they're in. I think he's just that good. Elliot had another very solid performance. Sponsors always go to him when they're awarding man of the match and when it's a very poor draw. Will Vaulks, I thought there's been a lot of slating towards Will Vaulks, especially in this performance and the last one. I thought first half Will looked really good. The way he was winning the midfield battle, The way his ball distribution, I thought, was pretty good. And obviously he's got his part to play in the opener. But second half he really struggled. It's that pressing. I think Osborne and Ibu Adams and Nathaniel Mundis-Lang and Corey Blackett-Taylor, they were right on him. They weren't allowing Will Vaulks a lot of time on the ball, and it really showed in Will's overall performance last night. He's had some bad performances so far, and I think it might be a case against Sunderland that he'll be dropped for Josh McEachran, because McEachran came on, and though he's not got the mobility of Will Vaulks, he is a bit more progressive in terms of his ball distribution and the way he thinks as playing in that 6 role. El Mazzuni had a really good first half, faded in that second half, tried to do too much at times. A couple of occasions where he tried to take on 3 or 4 Derby players, would get past the third and then get the ball nicked off him by the 4th. Try and do a bit too much. Obviously, it's a really nicely worked goal, and obviously he's credited with the assist. I think this was maybe another positive performance on the whole from Idris El Mazzuni, but we need to work some of those. I will say some of that poor decision making. We need to just a bit more work on that. But I think obviously I've gushed time and time again about just El Mazzuni and just how good he is. Ruben Rodriguez I thought was poor. I'm really surprised that he stayed until the 85th minute. Again, like Idris El Mazzuni, trying to do too much, and I think a case where this is one of those games where Ruben gets frustrated and is Ruben's own worst enemy. We know how good Ruben can be with the ball at his feet, and some of his play, some of his just intricate little play is fantastic. But I just believe that I think with what we've seen from Louis Sibley in the Portsmouth and the West Brom performances, I think Louis Sibley should get a run out at 10. If not that, obviously when we get a few more wide men back, move Tyler back into the 10. I think Ruben needs a bit of time out of the team. We saw what Ruben could do when he came on as a substitute. A couple of games ago, I think it was Stoke, where he came on as a substitute and looked dynamite. And I just think we need that from Ruben. He needs a bit of time out of the team so we can see what he can do with a bit of fire in his belly. Tyler Goodrum was decent. Some good attacking moves, took on his man, but I will always come back to the thing with Tyler that I think when it comes to the kind of latter stages of games, he's not quite got the pace to be taken on his man, especially when we're looking for a winner. There was one or two times where he kind of, if he had a bit more pace on him, he'd be able to get past his man. But, I thought his work with the ball to kind of keep the attack moving, I thought was really good. Dembele, another fairly forgettable first half performance by Siriki Dembele. Obviously the assist or his contribution in the assist is really good. I think the knock, I don't know when it happened in that first half, but I think the knock really affected his performance, and hopefully he's not going to be out for too long, because we know what Siriki Dembele's been able to do so far as an Oxford United player. Dane Scarlett obviously worked his socks off, and gets the goal. A little bit harsh, I think, of Des to take him off with an hour gone, given, of course, we've got Sunderland coming up on the weekend, and that might have been a good chance, this game, just to give Sparky a whole 90-minute rest. But I can sort of see what Des is trying to go for. 30 minutes in Sparky's legs in the lead up to Sunderland, 60 minutes for Dane, and then it'll be probably Sparky will get an hour, and then Dane will get 30 minutes. Of course, after that, we've got a week's break until the Swansea game. In terms of the subs, Owen Dale didn't do an awful lot. I really like Owen Dale. We just need to, I think he needs to be a little bit better on his decision making at times. I love his instinct to hit the byline, try and find the cross, but sometimes his touch is a little bit too heavy and takes the ball out of play, like we especially saw towards the end of the game. Harris obviously didn't do an awful lot with that half an hour. In the role he was being asked to play in the kind of back to the striker, trying to hold up the ball. I think Dane's much better at that than Sparky is. And it wasn't the kind of game where Mark could make a lot of an impact. Josh McEachran, as I said, I think he came on and was steady. I do worry sometimes with his lack of mobility, but he makes up for it with his ability on the ball as Josh McEachran. And then Louis Sibley obviously came on against his boyhood club and was fine. Didn't do an awful lot. There was one or two times he gave away the ball in the midfield area, and I think maybe the occasion got to him a little bit. He was trying to prove himself a little bit too much to Paul Warne. But, obviously Louis Sibley, he's not had a full 90 minutes as an Oxford United player in the league yet. And I think, it's probably time, I think, at least against Sunderland. And then Greg came on and he didn't have an awful lot of time to make an impact. But it is interesting seeing Greg deployed out in that wide area once again, and maybe indicates that Des is looking to play him as a winger against Sunderland, a bit more of a more defensive cover on the left-hand side for Kieran Brown, while also being fairly athletic. But overall, obviously, like I said at the start, it wasn't a vintage Oxford United performance. And I think fair to say that it's one that both sets of fans and players are going to forget very quickly. But an important point for both sides in terms of their overall games of staying in the division. Let me know your thoughts on Oxford's 1-1 draw with Derby County in the comments down below. And of course, we'll see you for another match overview against Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. And this might be a really, really tricky day at the office for the Oxford boys. See you then.